Do you also sometimes think that all the good ideas have been taken, there are no more original ideas left? I mean, every project starts with an idea, and every other project feels like it's a copy of the one before it. But we all still think of an idea as a creative process, but yet, after we look at something, we can easily find examples or similarities with other projects or other ideas within the industry. In order to get into how I come up with my ideas for my projects, how do I minimize creative block, I think it's good to identify what I mean by what is an idea and what I mean by creativity. The closest definition that resonated with me, I found it on dictionary.com. So an idea. An idea is any conception existing in the mind as a result of mental understanding, awareness, or activity. In short, is our understanding of our surrounding. Creativity, on the other hand, is the ability to transcend traditional ideas, rules, patterns, relationships to create a meaningful idea. In other words, how we connect different ideas to one another. So with that out of the way, hi, I'm Yashar, and welcome to Zentropy. Creativity, ideas. Where did I start Pocket Galaxy? Those of you who did not watch the intro video, I wanted to take a different approach with Pocket Galaxy. I wanted to explore different ways that I don't usually do, get out of my comfort zone, and try something that has a potential to fail. Again, one of the main purposes of Pocket Galaxy, one of my main goals was to maximize my learning during this development process. Again, by the definitions that I just described, creativity and idea for me are, in a way, can be summed up into curiosity, asking the right questions and kind of getting more interested with every other question that you ask. I always actually use curiosity and creativity interchangeably, but I think it's important to know, for me, creativity is about asking questions. And it's usually here, the first few questions, that it gets really hard because we don't know where to start, what to even ask, and we had a creative block. It's here that we start blaming the question.
What was this stupid, unfair question?
Don't blame the questions. Would you all stop yelling?
But it's actually a simple knot that I think I figured out for myself how to unlock it. And if I ask a question that I cannot either ask another question or answer, usually in my case, the question is too broad, it's too vague, it does not lead me anywhere, it doesn't lead me to another question, it doesn't help guide the conversation forward. If I use this in a day-to-day example, in our small talk, is when you ask someone, how are you? It's quite broad, it's quite impersonal, it doesn't really say too much. But if you just scope the question down to, hey, how was your weekend? This gives context, this gives meat to what are you asking for and what is the next topic. Even if the answer is generic, like it was good, didn't do too much, we still have the opportunity to ask additional questions, to dig deeper and actually continue the conversation forward. And this applies exactly the same way for how I come up with ideas. To imagine this in the context of Pocket Galaxy, we can start with a bad question. What is in space?
A rock, a dog, the earth.
That's a very broad question. There are planets, there are black holes, there are stars, there are moons. Okay, fine. Let's bring it to what we are familiar with. What's on the moon? Minerals, no oxygen, little gravity. Okay, let's break it further. Can I travel to the moon if I own a spaceship? How do I own a spaceship? Can I maintain a spaceship by myself? And this is where, for me, it gets interesting. Asking the questions that I can imagine as interaction, I can imagine as mechanics within a game. So what I just described was kind of like a framework of how I approach idea generation. So how do I usually start? So we start with the idea itself. Surprisingly, I try to avoid as much research as possible. This sounds wrong, but I get heavily influenced by other ideas that I feel like if I start researching before I have formed a certain understanding or a mental model of this topic, the idea is not mine anymore. So this is not necessarily true, but this is just how I usually like to approach it, and it's different for everyone. So again, I try to avoid as much research, see least amount of examples, and base everything on the current knowledge that I have. After I have formed the idea mentally, I start criticizing it. I start to poke as much hole as possible. I try to look at it at every different perspective. And this is not always easy because I have a skewed perspective, as it is in the end my idea. So I also try to reach out to some of my close friends who I actually think they have a different perspective from me, and try to listen what they have to say. And after I'm done with this, and let's say I pass the criticism phase, I just write it down and I leave the idea be for 1 to 2 weeks, if I have the time. This is for me to burn out the excitement. This is for me to come back to the idea and look at it pragmatically. Usually, if I cannot come back after 1 week and I'm not as excited as I was 7 days ago, how do I expect to finish this project months into it? This really helps me center myself and center the idea as I develop it. And in this time period, that 1 to 2 weeks or whatever after the idea generation, is where I allow myself to do research. I look into other games, I see if anyone else has done it, what is the market appeal, and again, it depends what kind of project it is. I'll start looking into the details of what I'm about to embark on. I feel like I also need to clarify that this is not always possible, this waiting period. This waiting period is dynamic, and with practice, it becomes shorter and shorter. But for my personal projects, especially when I'm trying to come up with a completely new idea, I try to stick with it. At work, this waiting period, this centering period is a lot faster. Sometimes it's as short as an hour, but sometimes if you're lucky, it can be after you pitch the idea, you have weeks that you can work on, get feedback from other designers, and actually work on it while you let it cure. Additional to what the game is about, in this phase I usually like to go very detailed, fully imagine how the interaction is, how the players will progress, how is the daily loop, what is the meta game, and I try to have a huge but high level plan of what the game will be. So I start even planning the development process. I even look at what are the first steps, what are the mechanics that I want to explore. I really imagine every single step through the process. I try to even foresee pitfalls and already have backup plans for if one of my approaches fail, which direction I will pivot the project. I sometimes even feel like I can imagine the entire development project way ahead. I know exactly what to do when a plan fails. I go in with all the plans and all the pivot points already predefined. And in my case, it helps me that I had the opportunity in my career to do almost every job. I've been doing programming, I did very basic art, I did very basic sound design, and I am a game designer. Marketing, still learning, but this really helps it puts everything in perspective when going into a project. And this is also what helps me define the deadline, the goal, the duration of the project. And this is where I deviated from how I usually do it. This time for Pocket Galaxy, I forced myself to not go in the project fully imagined. I thought by doing this, I will force happy accidents. I would discover new things. Again, I was getting very comfortable with how I develop games, what I'm doing, and I really wanted to rock the boat per se. After I had my setting and after I knew my platforms and how I want, or not how, where I want this game to be played, I started prototyping. But the challenge here, the first challenge for me was I had no direction to prototype the game in. I really didn't like this. I felt like I was going in the project blind. Every time I hit a roadblock, after solving it, instead of finding the road, I found another roadblock. And it was quite frustrating. It was definitely more creative, but it felt like it's not leading anywhere. It felt like I'm basically an infinite loop of trying to figure the core game out. And looking back, I would have definitely gone into the project with a little bit more plan. Because After reflecting back to my previous project, there has always been a happy accident during the development. It's a lot less visible because it suddenly falls into place like a perfect puzzle piece. It suddenly makes sense, and if your team is willing enough, and if you are willing enough, and the project is ready, this just makes sense. That's the whole point of happy accidents. And this meant that I actually truly found the idea of Pocket Galaxy halfway through. Actually, more than halfway through, a few months ago, perhaps. I found the idea when I stopped and I reflected on what the game is, how I want the interaction to be, how I want the players to progress. And then, only then, I could see if this game is fun or not. So if I am to give a recommendation on what might have been the best way for me to approach this project to allow happy accidents to happen, is to break down the project further. Rather than having the prototyping phase in mind and the end result, I would have broken the project down into milestones and allow that period to be as creative as possible. But for each milestone, then I would have a predefined goal of identifying a certain aspect of the game, be it the art direction, being exploring the mining mechanic, exploring anything that might be crucial to the core gameplay. Additionally, each of these milestones will need to be time boxed. This way, I also helped avoid feature creep. I also avoided myself from slacking off too much and deviating from the main goal of each milestone. And that's what I've been doing ever since I figured out there's a problem with my development process. So, what is Pocket Galaxy? I'm not here to give you an elevator pitch, so I'm going to talk about it freely. So, Pocket Galaxy is a procedurally generated universe that you play as space miner. You have your ship and you travel through the galaxy to find unique minerals. By finding unique minerals, you can sell them, you can craft them, and discover abandoned ships, abandoned planets, and find new recipes to craft new things to feed within the ecosystem of this universe. Additionally, as you progress through the galaxy, you find more challenges, different areas that you cannot reach for different reasons, and you need to upgrade your ship to accommodate this environmental challenges for your ship. You also find crew members that help you on this journey. Each crew member is also procedurally generated, not visually, but statistically for now. Maybe later I can also visually generate them, but each crew member will also have unique skills, how they help you in your ship, how they help you maintain, do they help you repair, craft, mine, do they help you go explore the abandoned ships? And that's basically the idea. I also want to point out to the elephant in the room. Whenever anyone talks about space and procedurally generated, there's one game that comes to mind. I'm just the elephant in the room. This is not No Man's Sky. If we just even compare the galaxies and the procedural engine within the game, this is a significantly smaller take. This is how I would like to explore and experience a galaxy, a portable galaxy in my pocket. And again, I cannot help to think that people will draw parallel to No Man's Sky, but this is far from it. I really believe that there are no real bad ideas, or there are no $1 million ideas. I think the idea is truly defined by the team that puts it together. When an idea faces a roadblock and they face a challenge, what decision is made to pass this challenge defines and shapes the idea as it develops. The idea is a collection of the effort put into the project. It's about finding that one inspiration, being it from another idea, one-to-one, and expanding on it.
I mean, Picasso had a saying, he said, good artists copy, great artists steal. And we have, always been shameless about stealing great ideas.
What this means is, a good artist or a good creative can copy a project one-to-one, but a great artist can take this inspiration and really build on it and make it their own. And I think this is just a positive note to end this video on. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll catch you guys next time.